Hello there. It's great to be back on your screens again with your favorite news and current affairs talk show, which brings you all that's happening in China and beyond. I'm happy to host you through an hour of content worth watching. We begin the show with China currents as usual. In this segment, we tell you about the increasing tensions between Japan and China and its root causes. We'll also bring you highlights of the G20 Summit and China's push for multilateralism, solidarity, and free trade. And then in sports, China's national games for top athletes conclude with 8 world records. I am Makiza Latifa. Let's get started.
Welcome to China Currents. In this episode, Japan once again provokes China as tensions between the two countries continue. At a G20 summit without the United States, China pushes multilateralism, solidarity, and free trade. China's national games for top athletes conclude with 8 world records. 2 Western reports show the China-US AI race has become a competition between Chinese talent on both sides. China trains engineering PhDs to tackle bottleneck challenges in the tech rivalry with the United States. Now let's start today's China Currents. Over the past week, tensions between China and Japan has further escalated, as the Japanese Prime Minister and his subordinates showed no remorse for their remarks that China sees as equal to a war declaration. They even announced that Japan would deploy offensive weapons at a military base just 110 kilometers from Taiwan. On Sunday, China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a statement quoting Foreign Minister Wang Yi that China must resolutely respond, he said. This is not only to safeguard China's sovereignty and territorial integrity, but also to defend the post-war achievement won with blood and lives, and to uphold international justice and human conscience. Wang is now the most senior Chinese official to publicly respond to remarks made by Sanae Takeichi. Amid tension over Japanese PM's comments, the PLA has tested combat readiness under real war conditions. The People's Liberation Army conducted live-fire drills simulating complex electromagnetic environments and unexpected contingencies, according to a social media post by the Navy's Political Work Department on Saturday. The exercises were carried out by a naval unit under the PLA's Eastern Theater Command, which oversees the Taiwan Strait. The Eastern Theater Command also released footage of the Type 05 amphibious assault vehicle on Thursday. Other theater commands have demonstrated their combat readiness. According to Beijing Daily, the Western, Central, and Southern Theater Commands, as well as the South and Central Air Forces and the South and North Sea Fleets, have recently released combat readiness videos. A South Sea Fleet video released on Wednesday bore the caption, "If the battle breaks out tonight, comrades, are you ready?" Despite China's outrage, Beijing is unlikely to initiate military action over a single statement from Japanese right-wing politicians, given its long-standing diplomatic caution and restraint. In an interview, Ding Yifan from the Development Research Center of the State Council said China has the strength to exert serious pressure on Japan. He pointed to the photoresist industry. China was once a stable market for Japan, but Japan chose to weaponize the supply of photoresist, using it as economic leverage. This instead created major opportunity for Chinese firms to catch up and enlarge their market share. Meanwhile, on the diplomatic front, Chinese Premier Li Qiang brought China's advocacy of multilateralism to the G20 Summit in South Africa, an event notably boycotted by the United States. Speaking to leaders gathered in Johannesburg, Li highlighted challenges facing international institutions. "We have to advance with time and take the lead to uphold multilateralism in the face of governance difficulties," he said. Without naming the United States, Li said diverging interests and deficiencies in global cooperation mechanisms were major obstacles to unity. "In the face of a weak global economic recovery, we must work together in solidarity, firmly uphold free trade and build an open world economy," Li said. And this is the first time Washington has failed to send a delegation to the annual summit of leaders from 19 major economies and the European Union. Earlier this month, President Donald Trump announced a boycott, accusing South Africa of persecuting Afrikaner farmers in what he called a white genocide, a claim vehemently denied by South African government. Even without attending, the US presence was felt, as many participating countries, including China, still face trade difficulties caused by tariffs imposed by Washington. In his speech, Li said the world must build a fairer and more open international trade and economic order and called for reforms of major Western-led international organizations. He added that developing nations should have a greater voice within these institutions. Moving to domestic developments, on Friday, China's 15th National Games concluded. This year's event featured 14,300 athletes, more than the London Olympic Games, representing 37 delegations, each competing for their home provinces. Many top athletes gave up commercial appearances or international championships to prepare, including tennis star Zheng Qingwen and swimming champion Siobhan Hui. In this highly competitive environment, the game produced 8 new world records, 13 Asian records, and 12 winning results that surpassed champion results of the Paris Olympics. China's influence is no longer confined to sports. It is also transforming the global tech race. The following section examines the growing global impact of Chinese AI talent. In the AI world, a long-run saying in the United States holds that if you don't speak Chinese, it's very hard to fully integrate into the AI community, as engineers switch to Chinese after work. From the group photo of Musk's Grok 3 team to the core staff list of ChatGPT, this saying appears increasingly credible. 2 new datasets from Western media again underline China's deep reservoir of AI talent. China not only produces major advances domestically, but Chinese AI researchers are also a key force behind American AI development. The first dataset from LexisNexis shows Tsinghua University leads in AI research, topping the top 100 most cited papers list and holding more AI patents than MIT, Stanford, Princeton, and Harvard combined. The second dataset from the New York Times cites studies highlighting the central role of China-born researchers in US AI labs. A 2020 Paulson Institute study estimated that nearly 1/3 of the world's top AI talent, mostly in the United States, is Chinese-born. Beyond competing in AI, China is doubling down on one of its strengths, producing engineers, a strategic move to better withstand US technology pressure. China's top universities are piloting a major reform that allows engineering PhD students to graduate with a product or design instead of a thesis. The policy aims to align education with the real demands of engineering and encourage top students to solve critical bottleneck problems that could give China an edge in the tech rivalry with the United States. According to China Science Daily, in September, Harbin Institute of Technology's doctoral candidate Wei Lianfeng became the first student to earn a PhD based solely on his product. The reform, initiated in 2022 and backed by China's Ministry of Education, along with 8 other key departments, targets strategic fields from semiconductors to quantum computing, areas where theoretical knowledge alone cannot overcome US-led technological blockades. Through the reform, students collaborate directly with leading enterprises and national laboratories to design new systems, build new equipment, and innovate under real-world pressure. Harbin Institute of Technology is among the first universities to implement the reform. Zhong Yingying, Executive Deputy Dean of the Graduate School, said the policy is very reasonable. Many engineering problems are unsuitable for the thesis format and may not be publishable at all, she said, especially for bottleneck problems where solutions can be found only through practical results. According to Xinhua, in June, the initiative has enrolled more than 20,000 engineering graduate students involving 60 universities and over 100 enterprises. And that's all for today. See you next time.
And up next is the Thinkers Forum, where we bring you great insights and perspectives from leading scholars and thinkers who have brilliant ideas to share on various topics. In this episode, we host a professor of international relations at Fudan University, Professor Shen Yi, who will be speaking on Taiwan and the Sino-US relations. Stay with us for more details.
Okay, Professor Shen, let's begin our conversation today by asking your opinion on the report issued by RAND on the 14th of October, not exactly recently, but has been making somewhat of a headline here in China of recent. And now the theme of the report, the title of the report is Stabilizing the US-China Rivalry. And to sum it up, there are 3 things that the report that says that the US should or can do to support the stabilizing of the US-China rivalry. Now, the examples include statements such as the US can say it does not support Taiwan independence and it seeks a permanent separation across the strait or to oppose any peaceful unifications.
That means the United States will seek to support a peaceful unification. So
Mhm.
I think that's the reason that make this report become one of the most hottest topic across the street. It's the first time that think tank like RAND to formally raise this idea that it's a time for United States to talking about that they will support the peaceful unifications.
Is it just one of the dozens of reports that the US semi-government think tanks issue on a monthly basis, or should we read too much into it, or is it that perhaps Chinese media is picking up on the parts that they like to hear?
It's a highly symbolic issues. So about 3, 5, or 10 years ago, it will be mission impossible. Any research institutions inside the United States, like RAND, will formally release such kind of report that raise this kind of ideas. RAND, comparing to other research think tank, it's a very classic think tank that don't have a strong political parties background, which means it's not especially pro GOP or DM, but it's a very standardized deep state institution, which means they RAND, they represent the voice from military industry complex in the United States. And RAND's logic is very interesting of that report. Number one, the assumption is United States must change its policies toward China in the name to stabilizing the US-China rivalry. There's several different meanings. The first layer of that meanings is seeing that RAND did not want to see that US-China rivalry become unstabilized. But the second meaning is such kind of unstabilized is mean that or implication United States and China will launch a military conflict, for example, in the Taiwan Strait. But last, and the most important layer of the meaning is RAND cannot sure that United States will win in such kind of conflict. So the worst things United States want is not a conflict with China, but is lost a conflict with China. That will be a real disaster. You know, if you can launch a conflict with China and defeat China decisively, United States will do it. United States definitely will do it. But the point is here, it's become little embarrassment for United States to admit the fact nowadays that United States already lost the capacity. And so the United States cannot defeat China decisively in the Taiwan Strait scenarios.
Is that a consensus or just a one-sided argument?
It's a common consensus. No one will seriously believe that today's United States can defeat China in Taiwan Strait. You can understand the thing like this. It's like a kind of taboo, or it's kind of atmosphere, unless people get a general consensus in certain cycles. Otherwise, no one will deliver such kind of report publicly. The RAND just delivered this report very publicly and did not feel any embarrassment to admit the fact and feel it's quite important and a quite creative initiative for RAND to deliver this suggestion that already proved everything. We have entered a new world, a new phrases of this word.
Was the timing of the release of the report of any significance?
Yeah, before the summit, before the meeting, and after the September parade launched in Beijing. We know that during the preparation period of the parade in Beijing, we know the news that a new draft of U.S. military strategies already delivered to Secretary Hexas on his tables. It's the draft versions. And according to traditional logic, this final version of the report should be released in about 2 or 3 weeks. But this report just disappeared. The only explanation is just they decided that, okay, guys, I'm sorry, but we need to rewrite the whole report because the September parade, the military shoes, they changed everything. That we need to re-estimate the military power and the capacities of PRA and the PRC, and then launch a new strategic assessment of China's strategic capacities and assets, especially those nuclear arsenals that has been shown during that parade, especially those advanced manned and unmanned mixed vehicles and the capacity, those mixed troops, and this digitalized, highly digitalized information integrated troops. And after I think after they finish the new estimate, they will deliver a new report. And then in that report, maybe United States will act in a more casual ways, to act in a more casual, which means self-restrict, keep the low profiles on those highly symbolic and sensitive things represented by Taiwan issues, and try to ensure, how to say that, launch the stabilizing to ensure the stabilities of these US-China relations. United States need to find proper ways to deliver China kind of reassurance and make China to accept a peaceful coexistence with the United States and make China feel more confidence. United States need to persuade China it's not necessary to deliver your as lethal forces, and you also can realize your final goals, which means to realize your reunifications. It's not that easy, but the United States already trying to find a way. You will read out from this RAND report. They use a sentence in a very interesting negative ways. It doesn't say that the United States will support the peaceful reunification. He said that United States will not oppose peaceful reunification. So it's very interesting to finding out that it want to make some movement, but did not want to move that far. It's worry about the first priority is the United States will not lost too much reputation and dignity while moving toward that directions. Also just want to make a very little move on that directions, and wish China can accept these deals and feel satisfied. We just wait and see. It will be very interesting.
Let's still stay a bit further on this segment, but this time around we take Professor Shen Yi's comment on the strained Japan-China relations.
Just now, there's been a lot of provocative acts or talks from Taiwan and from Japan. I don't understand why, but I mean, why would Japan feel they're in the right place to get involved in this issue at this particular time? How does that even work?
The answer is no. I think no one knows why this guy used this term, touched this topic in such kind of ways, in this kind of timing. No one knows. Because his behavior just like her act alongside Trump. No one understands what's the logic. She just wants to do it. In some aspect, from China's side, we believe that maybe she wants to send in a testing balloon. Such kind of testing balloon is very important to her. Maybe she can she can kick maybe 2 or 3 birds with this one stone. The first,
Is this some sort of just an attention-seeking act?
as I think she first wants to transfer attention from her poor domestic governance to a more highly symbolic security issues. Because nowadays, Japanese economy is that good. and Japanese people's life burden is rising very high, and this new prime ministers can do nothing to release the pain life of the living cost of Japanese peoples. So she want to transfer the attention from the critical side to a more simple and highly symbolic issues, which she can deal with only by using his very articulated terms. The first. And the second, I think that's one of the critical goals that the so-called the right-wing political groups inside Japanese countries want to realize during her administration, which means they want to push forward some important modifications of the peaceful constitution, especially Article 9. They want to providing basement to talking about a kind of scenarios that it's a proper time for Japanese for the survive of the countries, just like those war criminals did in 1930s, to tell people that it's a proper time to attack Pearl Harbors. Otherwise, Japanese empire will be defeated by those enemies and so on. The same logic they did in the last 8 or 100 years. And the third is, I don't know, but just like it want to sending some signals to test China and the United States baseline, especially she want to test to which extent she, just like that, this young prime minister, she believed because she is so cute in front of the President Trump. If you read his moving and body languages during that process, definitely she feel very happy. And she believed that she is so cute, and she maybe she believed that she got some assurance from President Trump, and Trump were providing some protections, a kind of black check, without any preconditions, so she can do everything.
What is China going to do about it?
I think that this time Japanese need to take China's diplomatic retaliations rhetoric very, very seriously, because it's the first time say that our vice ministers of foreign affairs that call the Japanese ambassador in China with the directions from the top leaders. It's the first time we read these terms, 奉使召见. It's the first time we read these terms in our formal news report, and several diplomats make a very clear explanations what mean 奉使召见 means. It means that I will have a paper. This paper in the name in Chinese name is 说帖. It's just kind of a formal statement, and I will read every terms on these papers on your face. And these papers is not written by these vice ministers. This paper, this statement represents China's national interest as very formal voices from the top leaders. So it's a very special.
It's non-negotiable. It's definitive.
It's just that I read out this statement and read these every terms in your face. It's very formal, very harsh, and it's very rare being used because it's just to prove I'm so angry. And I tell you that definitely I will do something to punish your to punish you if you don't take back your rhetoric. I just sending you a very formal statement.
What could be the punishments?
Yes, first time Chinese foreign ministers already sending the visit warnings to those Chinese travelers, say that it's not appropriate time to go to Japan.
Tourism.
Cut off the tourism. That means China want to launch economic sanction policies toward Japanese. We were moving step by step. And also there's news say that you will find that nowadays there's 3 ministers launched a statement on these issues. There's an office dealing with the Taiwan affairs in the state affairs, and 国务院台办, and the second is the foreign minister, 外交部, and the third is Minister of Defense, 国防部. It means that definitely you will see some highly symbolic military actions or even exercises alongside Japanese island, and to show that China is quite serious. And your rhetoric, if you don't take this rhetoric back, definitely maybe in the very, very worst scenarios, this escalation can lead into the real military conflict. And if you're considering the military capacities between China and Japan, such kind of conflict, if happened, will become a unilateral punishment taken by China toward Japan and Chinese people. We don't care that it's appropriate time to launch a kind of final count on all those historical debate between our two countries.
And that's all for the Thinkers Forum. Let's now continue the show with our roughly Chinese segment. And in today's episode, peace researcher Jan Oberg, director of the Transnational Foundation for Peace and Future Research, exposes how the military industrial media academic complex uses fear of World War III to paralyze the public. It promises to be exciting and informative, so don't go anywhere.
You couldn't give it to Daniel Ellsberg or Richard Fogg or all the other good Americans who fought for peace all their lives, or anti-nuclearism, because that would be offending to the United States. But you can give it to somebody who would offend China or whatever, that would be fine. Russia, of course, and you can give it to women who in Ukraine did human rights work and women's work fine, but also the same people who got the prize a couple of years ago argued for more weapons import so we can fight the Russians. I have a hard time understanding how they get away with it, because if we had free media, if we had investigative journalism, this prize would have been denounced across the board from the left to the liberal to the conservative press and say, that is not possible within the limits of Alfred Nobel's Peace Prize. But that's what it is. But you're raising another point, which I would like to just give a quick comment on. This idea that China will become an empire, a new world dominator that we must stop, has to do with a psychopolitical projection. And there's a lot, we talked about psychology and irrationalism. There's a lot of what is happening now where you blame somebody else for something you know that you did 10 times worse yourself, right? Russia should not have 1/10 of our military expenditures because that's dangerous. But it's not dangerous for Russia that we have 10 times more military than they have, right?
But we should have that.
They are the bad guys, so we are the good guys. We project all our dark forces out. This is psychology, if you will. I'm not a psychologist, but I read a little bit about it. The other thing is the utter ignorance in the Western world about China. Because, and I wrote an article recently about it, the Chinese, generally speaking, of course there are exceptions, but generally speaking, knows the West much better than the West knows China. And it's so easy to just use this projection of our own imperial motives or hegemonic motives and say, everybody will do like that. And that has to do with a third, intellectual failure of the West, namely, you can understand China by applying only Western concepts. So if we have been hegemon, we apply our hegemon concept to them. It could be that it doesn't fit China. I hope I'm right, not that it will not go to the head. There's a tremendous success in this country that you will keep humility, careful decision-making and all these things, because otherwise this could also, because success is dangerous. It could also go wrong. But in the genes, if in the social cosmology, the deeper way of thinking of the Chinese culture, I do not see any wish to dominate the whole world. Work with the world. If I listen to what your government and your president is saying, it is one initiative after the other for cooperation, for international law, for the UN Charter, for peace, for the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence. Now, you can be, of course, of the opinion in the West that all this is propaganda and a lie. Behind that is a very bad guy, right? But I have seen too much in this country to have any qualms or any hesitations about that. It is, China thinks differently, if you will, as a collectivity from what we do in the West. And the mission idea is foreign because the Chinese, like the Japanese, want to be special. They don't want anybody else to be like them.
Yes.
So long story short, we are doing all the bad things we should not do if we wanted to create a cooperative world. I mean the 12% of humanity who lives in the Western world. The 88 fortunately lives outside.
Wow.
And what I'm interested in, and will spend the rest of my life in, is to understand more of the 88%, because I see no hope with the present. I mean, everything can change, miracles can happen. With the present attitudes of the Western world, the European Union, the Trump regime, I don't see how it can survive as it is. And I don't see a leadership, an elite who wants and understands the writing on the wall, that if you can't beat them, join them.
Yes.
That would be the best for themselves. I mean, the idea of decoupling from China, you look at the economics, you look at technological development, you look at cultural development, you say we're going to maybe decouple from. And I asked myself when Madame von der Leyen is using these types of words, how would they feel if China said we're going to decouple from you guys, right? And I must say I was pretty surprised, and I've seen a lot of my life. I was pretty surprised that when Madame von der Leyen had recently visited China and she met your president, and she was very beautifully received compared with the way Madame Callas received your foreign minister in what looks like a container building with plastic chairs. She comes out, von der Leyen, in a press conference in Beijing, and she says, we're going to make it to work. We're going to make cooperation with China in the economic field and all that dependent on China putting pressure on Russia to stop the war in Ukraine. Now that's fantastic in my view, and it's a fantasy, because she represents the whole leadership. First of all, she's a leader of 400 million people to a certain extent. She says that she will make it conditional upon China putting pressure on Russia. She leads the organization who, together with NATO, has said, we are not going to use diplomacy with Russia. We're not going to talk to Russia. We have canceled Russia. We've canceled trips. We've canceled flights. We've canceled diplomatic relations, or at least cut down embassies. We don't want Russian cultural people to play orchestras or pianists in the West. We have stopped Westerners from seeing Russian media, which is a violation of human rights and international law, convention from the 60s in Geneva. She has the guts to tell your country to be put pressure on Russia, because she does not want, and everything she stands for with all the leaders in the European Union and NATO, we're not going to talk with Russia. But we're going to tell China that if they don't, we will have nothing to do. We'll de-link from China, right? I mean, when you're in that, you're living in your own world. You're not even living with some kind of principles. Because if you think pressure should be put on Russia, grab the phone. That's where I have a little positive attitude to Trump. He doesn't follow the rules. He says, okay, I'll talk with Vladimir. And then sometimes you go completely wrong or whatever. But if we don't talk with each other, we cannot solve any problems.
Yes.
I have lived through all the first Cold War. We always had confidence-building measures. We had Russians coming to the Swedish harbors, exchanging, having dinners with, drinking together, the Swedish Navy. We had politicians who met. We had confidence building, which Urho Kekkonen, the Finnish president, spearheaded. You had Willy Brandt's Ostpolitik, the rapprochement with Russia, opening up. You had him also kneeling down at the Warsaw Memorial, apologizing for what the Germans did. But we had always, the nucleus of the conflict was, anyhow, we must always have contact with each other. The most dangerous thing now is that there's no contact.
Yes.
Maybe there is behind the scenes, I don't know, you don't know, but having the guts to tell us somebody else should do our job that we have refused to do. We are so pissed with the Russians that we won't talk with them. I mean, this is too much for me. This is too much for me. This is so amateurish. It is irresponsible and without principles.
And next on the Roughly Chinese segment, we seek to answer a few questions. Why does the West insist on the China threat narrative? Peace researcher Jan Oberg explains the psychology of projection behind this narrative. With decades of experience analyzing international conflicts, he examines how Western hegemonic thinking distorts understanding of China, the politicization of the Nobel Peace Prize, and why the lack of dialogue with Russia makes today's world more dangerous than the Cold War era.
So I kind of wanted to ask you, what can the people within the US do and the people around the world do in order to potentially work towards a peaceful coexistence?
I have the philosophy as a doctor. You may have to go through, because of the diagnosis and the prognosis, you may have to go through a very difficult surgery. We hope you will heal and become a healthy and happy human being again. That's what the world needs. The Western world needs to go through now surgery and come out on the other side as a healthy West, balanced West, a friendly West, when it has found out that, it has to get rid of its empire and racism and colonialism and interventionism. But I think one thing that stands in the way is that far too many scholars and politicians and media, these are my three problematic sectors. And I tell you why, because they all belong to MIMAC, and that's a military-industrial media academic complex. It's a military-industrial complex that Eisenhower talked about is not enough. It's a military-industrial media academic complex, MIMAC. And I am sick and tired of geopolitical commentarism, where, Trump writes something on Truth Social, or Madame von der Leyen says something, or Mette Frederiksen in Denmark says something outrageous about smashing up Russia, because it's the world's biggest threat and all that. And then they interpret these war talks, and they argue these geopolitical commentators. You find them every day on videos at YouTube or Bilibili, I suppose, or Substack or whatever. Some of them are very knowledgeable, very good, but they've never said anything interesting about peace and how to solve problems.
Yes.
Lots of these people who have hundreds of thousands of viewers and people sympathizing with them are people who these very days, sitting saying, we're on the way to the Third World War. And I must say, as an intellectual, how the hell do you know? What gives you the right to sit here and say that without any theory or concepts? What these people are doing is to air their own fears and pour them out over the viewers and those who sit and want some ideas to begin to act, as you said. So if you're told that we are this close to the Third World War, why not take another bottle of wine and enjoy life as long as it's there? Why should you go to the streets? Why should you begin to write letters to the editor? Why should you go and demonstrate? Why should you blah, blah, blah? Leave your job in the military-industrial media academic complex, for instance? Why should you do all these things if war is coming around the corner?
Yeah.
One, we don't know that Ukraine will spread to the rest of Europe. It's still a limited war. After 3 years, they have not been able to take more than 20% of the country. And it was not a full-scale invasion. It was anything, but it was less than 1/10 of a full-scale invasion. If you wanted to take Ukraine, you should have spent about 1 million men to do it. They put in 137,000 or something like that. No. Nobody says that will spread to Europe as a conventional war. There's no proof, no theory, no concept that says that a conventional limited war in Europe will go nuclear. That's what the strategists have been saying theoretically. We don't know. They could have an interesting saying, if there's a war, a conventional war, there will also be a nuclear war. And then typically for the West, if it should hit us in Europe, God forbid, I live there with my family, if that happens, it will develop into a world war, nuclear war, the Third World War, right? Excuse me, how do you know that?
Yeah.
They have no theory behind this. This is lousy intellectual, anti-academic work. And That's one thing which I could criticize because there's no theory, no conceptualization, no intellectualism behind saying that. It's just hypotheses, loose hypotheses. But I can also say the real damage done is that people who want to act and do something, they are discouraged from doing it. Because if you hear that the nuclear war all over the world will all be gone, you don't mobilize your energies and say, yes, I have hope, I'll work for this, I'll work for this. And that is the problem we're living with. Everybody's too occupied by history and the present, but too little occupied with the future.
Yes.
Probably because the West does not see that it has a future. But that's a long story. You argue here in China for, where do you want to be in 20 or 30 or 40 years from now, and your 5-year plans and all that kind of thing.
Many plans.
But
yes.
there is a future-oriented discussion, and it is influenced by peace thinking too. That's what fascinates me. I'm not happy with everything I hear and see, but it's an attitude to the future that we don't have in the West anymore. And that interests me as a sociologist and a peace researcher. So I think it's a damn duty of an intellectual, at least if you're a peace researcher, which there are very few, I'm a dying breed, you have a damn duty to come up with proposals, solutions, even if they're considered romantic or they're considered unrealistic. The first thing you hear people in the system say, oh, it's not realistic. Now, how realistic was it to get rid of slavery? The first few people who started working at that, they think they can get rid of slavery because slavery was a natural thing, right? What about cannibalism? What about absolute monarchy? What about child labor? What about the very short time it took for people to stop smoking at public places? So every little change that becomes a big change is considered unrealistic or impossible in the beginning. I like to work with impossible futures because one of them could be the real future. So if you ask me about peace, I would say scrap everything that is offensive. Scrap the theory of deterrence, because deterrence is a promise that I can kill you thousands of kilometers away where you live if you don't do what I say or if you do something I don't want you to do. But I don't have the intention. I just have the ability to kill you and mass kill your children and whatever. Imagine that instead we all had Chinese walls. I mean, not in the physical sense, but symbolically speaking, we are all able to defend our own society, but we're unable to attack somebody somewhere else.
Yeah.
I tell you what, war would disappear. And so some people would say, if they're radical in terms of nonviolence, they would say we should not have weapons at all. There should be no weapons in the world. I would like that to be possible, but I would also say let's start with a little bit less of a task, namely to say let's convert all military to defensive defense, short range, limited destruction, tight, fast, mobile, so we can defend our own territories, whether China or Denmark. Secondly, combine that with civil resistance, combine that with nonviolent resistance if you are anyhow occupied or you misused, and combine that first of all with early warning of violence in conflicts that look like they might become violent. We should have early warning. We should have somebody who is out early. The longer a problem lasts, the more difficult it'll be to solve. Right? If you take your flu, the earlier you attack it and do something about it, the easier it is to do something about it, right? So early warning is terribly important. And then education for conflict understanding. We should not get rid of conflicts. We should get rid of violence. That's a hell of a difference.
Yes.
Because any family, any school, any workplace, any political party, any society has conflicts and will always have it. Otherwise, you're a dictatorship.
Yes.
If we are vibrant people with different ideas and projects and what we want to do, the wife wants to go to the cinema, the man wants to go to the football game, how do you deal with it? You don't beat each other up. You try to deal with them. Today we perhaps go together to the football, tomorrow we go together to the cinema. That type of stuff. It's banal. Not much of what I'm saying is banal. I'm almost ashamed of it, but it's not that banal in the present situation. The wrong thinking in the West is that conflicts is about bad people, evil.
Yes.
From Freud and onwards, it's about evil. You're evil. That's why I have a, but I'm good, right? It's this dichotomy between you're evil and I'm good, and you're doing bad things to me, and I'm trying to be so good to you, right? Look at a conflict as a problem. What is a problem? Who is party to it? Who has this problem? Why has it been created? What is the problem that led to the war? Because all problems, let's say, all violence, all wars have underlying conflicts. Whereas you can have conflicts that do not lead to violence.
Yes.
So the earlier you grasp something that is, you know, when Putin said in 2017 at the Munich Security Conference, what happened to your promises to Gorbachev and your expansion of NATO is a huge problem to us. That's when we should have listened. That's one part of the description of the problem. So you do attack the problem, don't attack people. You're solving no problems by saying Putin is bad. He's solving no problems by saying everything in the West is bad. We're not solving any problems. Now you have all these intellectual dwarfs and kakistocrats in the security sector who say the first thing we do is to start a war. And have more weapons. 5% of gross national product is not too much. We need even more, perhaps 7 or 8 or 10 in the future, right? We're militarizing ourselves to death.
Yes.
Because every time you spend money on the military, you cannot spend money on constructive things, welfare, culture, health, education, etc. So the world we could create is one which definitely, until further and until something better has been invented, is the United Nations Charter, international law, the norms built over 100 years that we must not throw out. And then each country could have a lot of reforms of the military sector. If you want military, that's a discussion. But what I say is military defensive only, non-offensive defense. The idea of deterrence, which can kill you thousands of kilometers away, will always lead to more armament, because if I can hit you, you want to have weapons that you can hit me with. A good defense is one that does not lead to overarmament. A good defense is a defense where everybody is on a low but effective level of the military. You see what I mean? It's a completely different perception of what defense means. If you accept military, you can say, okay, we should live in the ideal world where nobody has it. But what I'm talking about is basically, imagine the difference between two streets. In the first street, you have everybody walking the pavements and the streets, they have submachine guns. And imagine the next street, the parallel street, in which everybody is trained in jiu-jitsu. Self-defense. Only if you come to me and do something, you know how to get me down on the ground and defend yourself. But not with violence, with elegance, you know.
And it's a wrap for today's edition of China Now. I'm super excited to have come your way with the show, and even more excited for what's to come in the near future. Please remember to send in your comments, your thoughts, your feedback, and suggestions for the coming episodes of the show through the email provided below. My name is Makiza Latifa, and I'll see you same time next week.